All right, can you see the screen? Lesson 27?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, good. All right, we're in lesson 27. We're more than halfway through with the book now. Thank you. Total. This book gets way beyond first year Greek. It gets into second year Greek and college level. So we're looking at the aorist passive. Now, by way of review, we had an aorist middle voice. Remember, there's a difference. There's two of the tenses that have a different form in the middle and passive and all the rest of the tenses, the middle and passive have the same form. So obviously aorist was one that had a different form. What else had a different form?
Future.
It's right on the screen, the middle of the screen, in it, the future, because it's built on the same basic form. Okay, it's built from that aorist passive. Now notice what he says here. Now, I'm going to take that first reading at first in just a minute, back away. The sixth and last principal part of our Greek verb is the aorist passive. So we're just about ready to look at all of the principal parts. We look at them, we've already covered them. We're just going to go through them and see how they fit together. There's a lesson, I don't remember which one it is, 28 or 29. We'll cover that. Now, what we have here is he says the sixth and last principal part is the aorist passive. It's the only stem that developed a passive form different from the middle. Now, right there. Now, what he's telling you is something I've already told you earlier, but you don't remember everything I tell you, unless you got a memory like Ted Cruz, which he has an autographic memory. He can remember everything. Whenever he's in a debate, he can remember everything he hears. But it's the only stem that developed a passive form different from the middle. The middle was the first. That's what they tell us. The authorities tell us the Greek developed the middle voice before it developed the passive. And so the passive come off of the middle form in everything except the aorist and the future. So it had a stem that developed a passive form different from the middle. Now, any questions about that? Now, I think I told you last week or the week before, or the last few weeks at least, that the aorist tense is roughly 42% of your verbs are aorist in the New Testament, around 42%. I think it's like 41.8 or something like that percent. I've got a book that tells us. I think I've got it in one of these files that I've sent to you. But that being the case, then we have a small percent that are future. About 40% are present tense. So that gets you like 82% or 83% of the verbs are either aorist or present. So the remaining 18% roughly is the other tenses. Perfect is very, very, very small amount. So it's kind of almost negligible. So we're left with perfect and future and imperfect. And so what we got there is the future's got enough. It probably kicks up close to maybe 8%, but it would, I think it's together with the future and the aorist, they'll get about 50% of the verbs in the New Testament will be either one of those. So about half of your verbs will have a middle passive that's different form, roughly half. Any questions? Now then, what do we do if we've got a present or an imperfect or a perfect, that is, or a pluperfect, that is in the middle passive form? How do we decide which it is? Someone help me. We have to look to context, don't we? Is everybody still there?
Still here.
Okay. Well, you have to look to context. And so that becomes a contextual question. And if you can make a good argument from context, you can argue that it is middle or passive, whichever. All right. But I would argue that it's strictly context. I think that's what all the authorities will tell us. And there are some passages that are translated as passive that could very easily be middle voice. Now, there's been a little rumbling in the brotherhood on the work of the Holy Spirit with the teachings of Mike Deaver. He's teaching direct operation of the Holy Spirit now. But with that in mind, what we run into, there are several passages on the strengthening of the Spirit, or he strengthens, and some of the influence type passages that are middle voice. Why do I know? Because they're either future or aorist. I know they're middle. And then we have some other where those same words are used when it's middle passive. And the context is almost the same. And I would argue, since we know some are middle and the context is basically the same, I would argue the middle passive we should go with middle on it. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that's part of my reasoning on that, but I'll not digress further on this. All right, let's go up to our verse. And there was a mistake in my book. It had 55 here, and I changed it to 54. That's at 1 Corinthians 15:54. Yours probably has 55 in it, but I changed it, I corrected it. I looked at that and said, that's not verse 55. So I looked it up, and sure enough, it's verse 54. All right, so your book probably has 55 in it. Okay. Kathe pothe, ho, thanatos, eis, nikos. Kathe pothe is aorist passive. Now, what we have is we have the theta eta ending. And so I'm going to write out the verb that this comes from. Let me write it down here just a little further. This is kata pino, okay? Kata pino, okay? So right there, oops, kata pino. And, well, fiddle. I have to go down to symbol font. All right, there we are. Now that'll make it. There's Catapino. Now we don't have an accent mark on the iota, but it has an accent mark which goes in that direction. That's your acute. Okay. All right, so what we have here is Catapino. Now, you remember the rule. We have an augment. There's your augment. So what they do is they will change this. And what they do is they make it kata. And so this becomes an epsilon here. So what we have is, what is this called? An augment, you remember? The augment will be right here, be after the preposition. Now then, let's come down to our rules down below, and we can see how this works. We had, in this case, there's two forms of it, of the aorist passive. There's a second passive, and so we have the second passive now. So what we do is, the passive endings will be aorist passive. We'll have the eta nu. That's first person singular. And this form, some of them put a theta in front of that, and some don't. So ours doesn't put a theta in front of it. So right here we have here, it does, I'm sorry. But we have here, we have a theta eta, and so this will become a theta, let me see, theta, eta, yeah, theta, eta. And so that's your ending. That's how it worked right there. So our ending here, so that makes it third person singular. And this is from Luo, of course. Well, there's your augment. And then the theta. And we have dropped the omega, and there's your basic stem of it. Okay. So that's how we got this up here. And that's how it worked. Of course, we do have they're going to put a connecting valve in here, okay? So we have a connecting valve, okay? Both then. All right. Now, this becomes an Omicron here, right here, all right? And so that's how that works. All right, any questions? So that is third person singular, passive voice. Let's work it out. So we have kata pino, and it becomes kata pothe. And the thay ending is your third person singular right down here. Okay. All right. Now, ho thanatos, of course, we've had that in our last lesson, I think, was the dead. And so death, the death, that's your subject. It is swallowed up in victory. Now, the verb is in front of the subject, which is not the normal order. Although remember, Greek can be either, but this means that there's an emphasis here upon it, and so the word swallowed up is emphatic, and so death is the death or death. And it's the death in the context. You have to look in the context. Is swallowed up with a view to, ace is with a view to victory. The Nike shoe company, Nike is Greek for victory. Nikos, right? So it's swallowed up in victory. Any comments there? All right. That's just right out of the text of 1 Corinthians 15:54. All right. The form here, let's come down here now. The aorist and the future are the only ones that developed a different form from the middle. The form eluthane, and this form right here is translated I was loosed right here. That's from right down here. I was loosed. So there's your augment, and there's your ending, or the first person singular passive, aorist passive. That's your ending for first person singular passive. For this verb, there's two different endings. One of them has we'll see it in a minute, doesn't have a theta on it, but everything else is the same. All right. So I have a first and second form. This is your second passive form right here. And I introduce the second one first. And so we get it down here. Here's your first aorist right down here. And grapho is the first aorist. Luo is second aorist. Because they use luo as their standard, they introduce the second passive first, okay? That's why they introduce it first. Now your preposition, your infinitives here, we'll get to a prepositional one in just a minute, but infinitive has that ending. There's your basic ending right there. Now, what we do down here, since this verb is luo is second, it has a theta on it. So what we do is we put a theta to make an infinitive, and then we have a connecting vowel, and there'll be an eta. So your eta is basically your connecting vowel, your theta, see, thane. Now, here's a problem. If you're not careful, not looking at it carefully, you'll look at that ending there, and that looks like an accusative case noun ending, doesn't it? So you're ace, and you're a, and you look at that, and you'd almost think that's for nominative singular, feminine. And right there, you got that right there is your genitive ablative singular feminine ending. But these are verbs, and so that can trip you up if you're not careful. You just glance at it, you think you got a noun instead of a verb. So you got to look at them carefully. Okay, is that clear? Everyone see that? And of course, over here you've got the endings that look like omen, ete, and then you got son ending, which of course fits the aorist. Okay, all right. So that'll be theson. And so we have this thane, thais, thay. That's your three endings. Let's go over here and just take a quick look at it. Right there they are. That's your middle. There's your active. There's your middle. And there's your first aorist. And that's right here. You got thane, thais, thaman, thete, thason. All right. That's your first aorist. All right. All right. I think I've got those backwards on that table. I think this is second aorist. I'll check. I may have to correct that. Just notice that. All right. Okay. Remember, however, your what I did here is I didn't watch my P's and Q's. This right here, it is first aorist in the middle. I mean, it's second aorist in the passive, I think. All right. So I think I've got this wrong. Right? I think that needs to be corrected. I'll go back and check it. Okay. Just notice that. I just assumed they were the same, and they're not. They don't necessarily follow through the same. And here's your infinitive forms down here. Now notice we only have a present aorist, first and second, and the perfect infinitives. So our other infinitives we don't have them, okay, in here. So you don't need an imperfect infinitive because it does the same thing the present does, okay? And so you don't need that, okay? All right? Any question there? I think that's a mistake. I'll go back and verify that, but I'm pretty sure that is. All I'll do is I'll either just flip these table here, which I may do that, or I may just make this second and make that first, but have them backwards. I think for symmetry, I need to flip the table though. I like symmetry. All right, let's go back. I'm a symmetrical type guy. Okay, sorry about that. All right. So right here, the sign of the first aorist is theta epsilon or theta eta. All right. Sometimes long and sometimes short. Depends on the rules for making them long or short. And so the sign of the second aorist, the sign of the first aorist is theta. I have it right. Well, the second. This is wrong. This is not second passive. This is first passive. I've got a mistake right here. This is first aorist passive. Okay. This right down here is second aorist passive. All right. I don't know. It's a mistake. I had a mistake in the book here. So I was right. My table is okay. All right. Okay, let's look at this. Let me correct that. Nobody caught that. All right. Okay. All right. So right here now, all we have is we have these endings here. Thane, thais, they. Now then, this is from Luo. Now your ni ending has a linking vowel with the theta on it, thani. That's your infinitive. All right. Now then your second aorist, and so one of our second aorist passives is grapho is one. Here's one that's second aorist. So we can take grapho, and what we do is we drop the omega, and we put in place of omega, just put ain without the theta. So it's the same without the theta. We just don't have the theta. We have the ain ending. So right here we just have ain. Ain, ace, a. Ain, ace, a. This has the theta. Amen. So we have amen, ate, ason. Amen, ate, ason without a theta. See, we just don't have the theta. That's the only difference. And your infinitive will have an ani instead of a theta. There won't be a theta there. Is that clear? So that's the only difference. You just got a theta in one of them and don't have the theta in the other one. Okay. So it functions the same way. Are there questions? All right. And any problems with that? Anybody? All right. Let's come down here to some of our verbs in the second passive form. And we have strepho. It's one of our verbs with second passive. Other verbs that take second passive include strepho, So right here's here's a verb. Grapho is a second passive, and strepho is. Now here's the trick on some of these right here. Some of these words, like strepho, have compound forms, and so I believe we have oppo, strepho. I believe that's a word, and so we'll change that. And this sucker is not. I'm having to go down there and catch it again. I guess if I'd leave it up on the screen, it would. Symbol font. There we go. That'll do it. And this should be an Omicron instead of an Omega. Okay. I believe that's a word, of course. And so we would have this word here compounded with apo. And I think there's hupo, and there's 2 or 3 prepositions that are compounded with it. And so right here, let's just take this right here in its normal form. We put an augment on the front of it right here. There's your augment. And then we take our basic root, and we just take the omega, and this becomes an alpha instead of an eta because of the rules of the lengthening of some of the vowels. And so what we do is we do that, and this becomes on. I turn, there's passive as active meaning. Okay. So that's and that is wrong. Okay. That's a mistake. So fine. Let's do that. I'll just cut and paste. There we go. That is correct. There was a mistake there. All right. And so we have ain ending instead of an on ending. I looked at that, and that can't be right. Okay. So right here, when we'll start going through it, like I said, it had a mistake in it. So it's just got the ain ending. And of course, we have an augment on it, and it takes the basic root word right there. Right? Okay, so we correct that. I mean, man, I've already found 3 mistakes in the book. I had gone through it twice. Okay, so whenever we do this right over here, if we wanted to put an augment in here, we would probably put right here, this become an epsilon. That would become an epsilon. And if we want to make this first person, we just make it ain. So that would become ain. That was what that would become. That would be first person. And there's your augment. There's your first person singular ending right here, ain. See how it works? Any questions?
Yes, I do have a question. In the example down below, you said the epsilon was lengthened to alpha. In this case, you're not lengthening. Why not in this case? To the right of your cursor, where it has I turned, I thought you, no, down below on the sentence below where your cursor is. That, yes.
Right there?
No, strepho. And then, yes, right there. I turned, I thought you said the alpha in this word as strophane, that the alpha there was lengthened, and that's why it's alpha instead of epsilon. Did I miss the point?
This is the root word. This is from your root. If we go back to strepho, we may have this word over in our vocabulary. Let's see if we do have it.
We might have eupostrepho, which is the to return.
Let's go down here. Let's see what strepho is. Strepho. ST. Oop, I don't have it. I don't have the root word here on it. Okay, sorry. No, strepho. Okay, I may have it. Strepho. I don't have it in here. So it's not in my vocabulary here. Okay, I don't have it in. Okay.
But it is valid. The alpha is valid.
Okay, well, wait a second here. Streph. There it is. I turn around. I don't have the root word here. I think it goes back to the root words. That's our situation here.
Okay.
I think the alpha is part of your root. All right. I think that's why. This from this word, I'll have to look it up, but I think the root word here is strep.
Okay.
I think that's your root. All right. I think that's what happens there. Okay. So I'll try to research that for next week. That'll be my assignment. Okay. And get that, see if I can get that word. All right, get the root word for it. All right. That's a good question. Okay. Hupostrepho, apostrepho, there's several different forms of it. And which, in case, if that's true, if that's the root, this would be an alpha here, wouldn't it? All right. If that's your root right there, that would be an alpha when we do that. Okay. Other questions? Other questions I can't answer without studying some more. Okay. That's a good question there. Well, I'll work on it. Okay. All right. All right. Let me fix this here. Now we can save it. All right. All right. There we go. All right. Now then, so remember when we have a compound word, like angelo, angelo is not compound, but this word would, we take our basic root, and here's your root. I believe that's your root right there. When one of the llamas drops off on the root, so it's probably this is your root. Okay. And so right here is your root. And so one of the llamas drops off. So there's your root. And they augment it. The alpha becomes long. It becomes an eta. Eta is long. Alpha is short. And then instead of omega, we have ain right here. I was. So that will be your ain ending. That's your ain ending right here. Any comments there? And again, this gets back to, that's why I need to make this material where all of these words, we've got the root word in this file that I sent you. That'll make this a whole lot easier, don't you think, everybody? And so that's what we're working on there. Hopefully I can get that done. All right. Some of your later books are tending to do that. I don't know why we don't have it here. It has it from time to time. He'll throw in the root word, but he doesn't always do it for us. Okay. But I put a bunch into that file that I showed you, Greek lexicon and grammar notes, that file right there. I put a bunch in there, but I don't have it here on this word. Okay. All right. Okay. This word can also be compounded, and we can compound it with apangelo. That would be apo as a prefix, A-P, A-G-G-E-L-O, and then I can make that. Got to go all the way down to the symbol font there in alphabetical order. Put that in the symbol font. That'll make it Greek. There you go. There it is. Well, compounded. There we go. And so right there, you put your augment right in here, and you make that ending right there, one of these endings up here. That's what you do with that. Any questions about that? So you have several different prepositions that are put on the front of this word to make a little bit different word, but it spins off. It's still from angelo. So everything else except your augment would stay the same. So that's what they're trying to tell you there with this. Now come down here. He has a hyphen on this, and the hyphen here, I think your book may not have that hyphen, but the original did. And they're trying to tell you this is a legitimate word here in the Greek, but this hyphen that's compounded with a lot of other words here. So they show it in the basic form here, and that's first person singular. The alpha becomes an eta, that's your augment. And then you have your basic root. And so your two sigmas become basically, they become a gamma from one of our other rules. So those two sigmas become a gamma. So there's your root word would be probably this right here, and with a gamma. So it becomes a gamma. So there's your basic root. And then we have here the ain ending right here. That's your ain ending right there. I was changed. Okay. Now, what they do is they have this word, and let me do it now. Cut. Katalasso, A-L-A-S-O. Katalasso. All right. Symbol. And so that word right there, that's the word they're doing right here. So they just put kata on this right over here, made that kata. And so this word right here is here. That's there. And they put kata on the front of it. So the augment becomes an eta. And so this right here becomes an eta. That lengthens it. And then we take the basic form, and the omega drops off and becomes an eta, amen. And so the sigma drops off also. So we get an amen ending. We were reconciled. This word is in the New Testament right here. I checked it. It's in the New Testament. We were reconciled. So we talk about reconciliation, which is, if you study that word, it's a pretty interesting word to study, because when you reconcile, it's on equal terms. So if a husband and wife are having troubles and they reconcile, and it's true reconciliation, it ought to be on equal terms. Okay. Any questions or comments? That's a good point to make with people. Okay. All right. So that's that word up there. Now then they can also probably, I didn't check it, but they can probably compound this with some other prepositions too, as well. Most likely, Greek's pretty good about doing that. Okay, and so this is angelo, and so angelo is a verb form of the word angelos, which is an angel. That's a messenger, someone who announces things. Okay, just a verb form of it. This word here is from allos. All right, and so right here, this is from the root word allos. If you go back and study it, and I bring this up for this reason, that capitalized it for me. And if I make that symbol font, that will make it what I want to do here. I got to go a long ways to get that symbol font. Allos. Now, allos is it's another of what kind? Help me out here. I keep forgetting that.
Another of the same kind.
Yeah, think of alloys, see? You put different metals together, the same kind. So this right here And so this is another of the same kind. So that's, see how your reconciliation fits in with that word? You're both on equal fit and equal fitting ground, or equal fit basis. Okay, so that's where that word comes in. Okay, any comments or questions there? All right. Now let's look down here. Passive of deponent verbs. The deponent, the claim is that a deponent is middle form, middle passive form. In this case, it'll be middle. That it's a passive form, but it has an active meaning according to them. So it has no middle form. All right. And take the aorist passive form with active meaning. So the claim is that the aorist passive then is working as an active voice. I go. This word is found when Paul is going to go to journey through. This is to journey. This is to take a journey. Okay. Erchomai is another word for coming or going. And we have boulomai is also one that's deponent. And I intend, I am willing, it's the will of my mind. And here's some of the forms that they have. You can see the thane ending. Thane on both of these right here, okay? These are all my verbs. Then we have apokrinomai, and that's from the judge. And apokrinomai is to give an answer to, say. All right? And so I answer. And these are some of your different forms. You have a main ending and thane. That's your forms here. Your main and thane. And so you have right here, and thane, right here. But it's got a theta in it, thane. All right, thane. All right. Now, euphonic changes, we're down to about 10 minutes. I'd like to get this finished if I could. I don't know if I can make it. I've got off too much on other stuff. But we'll do what we can for next week. The euphonic, U is of course good, and phone A is sound. So these are changes that make the Greek, the vowels and the letters go together. There are just some vowels, some letters you can't put together. There's supposed to be one letter in the English language you can't hook up with another letter. But I think it's a Q. It can't be hooked up with some other letter. But there is one word that it does hook up with. It's an Eskimo word. Okay. But I won't get off on that. It has to do with something that they say. Okay. Inuit, I think they're called Inuits. But sometimes they'll add the sigma to it. Many stems, a sigma is added after the stem. And akuo is one of those that does this, so it puts a sigma in there. Well, we remember the sigma has been used for the aorist as well as before, so we can augment there, put a sigma in, and we still have thane. All right, and so your future here, and that will be aku, no augment, see, future, and thesomai. And so it becomes soma. That's your future. And again, your augment and your middle, perfect middle. Right? Ruomai, deliver. All right. That's ruomai. Any questions about these right quick? All right. Metathesis, and the word thesis is to place, from tithemy. And the meta-thesis, and so right here we have meta-thesis, meta-thesis, metathesis. So this is to place in the midst of. So right here, balo, for example, our word balo, and we put lambda, lambda, omega, ball, your basic root word. What it does, this one does a little trick on you. These two letters reverse position. They reverse position on us right there. Then we got ball, and then we blah. And so it becomes beta alpha lambda becomes beta lambda alpha. So that makes it different here. So there is your beta lambda alpha, and the alpha becomes a long, it becomes an eta, okay, in this form. And of course, you got the augment on the front of it. Okay? So right here, you have blah, the alpha becomes an eta, you have a thane ending, and there's your augment. Okay? Right? And call, and that's compounded with other prepositions too. What happens here, when they're compounded, they follow the same rules the basic one followed. And so balo can be compounded with other prepositions. Kaleo can be also compounded. Epikaleo and proskaleo. And they may become an omi verb or deponent when they do that sometimes. So call, and of course right here, in this case, we have here, and so they become call. Okay, here's our form. Okay, the alpha and lambda reverse positions, and so they reverse positions, and the alpha becomes an eta, make it long. So they did reverse positions here, the alpha and lambda reverse positions. Comment? So there's some words that do that, and your lexicon will tell you, you can find that in the lexicon. You can see the reverse position on you. Right? And Thayer will have them listed. Now, Thayer only lists the forms that are found in the New Testament, so he doesn't clutter it up with a lot of forms that aren't there. I like that. But Thayer it's good for the New Testament, but it won't help you if you get off into other Greek sources, okay? Because it won't always have what you want, right? Some other lexicons will be more thorough, right? So they'll get off into other stuff, right? Liquid stems, we've talked about those as well, what they do here. And of course, you have stello, and then your preposition in front of it. So your augment's going to be right here. This omicron turns into an epsilon. Your op stays the same. All right. And your stello, again, it drops one of the lambdas, and so it becomes a stall. And that, of course, is kappa. And then over here is your passive form right here. That's your passive. So again, the augment goes here, and you have an ain ending. So this one doesn't have a theta in it, does it? It just has ain. And of course, your ain ending will be what? Let's go back up and see. Your ain ending will be first person singular. Okay? All right. I've forgotten where I was now. I think I was about right here. All right. All right. Questions or comments? We're getting close to the end, and we might not be able to. It might take us 3 weeks to get through this because I've spent too much time on other stuff, but that doesn't hurt us. We have Pinot here as that drink, and that was compounded with one of our original words up here. And it's compounded with this word right here. And that's from Pinot. All right. Kata Pinot. Okay. I drink. And so that swallowed up. We translated swallowed up, but the Greek is kata, it's swallowed down. The Greek says swallowed down. We say, did you eat that meal? I ate it all up. Well, the Greek would say I ate it down, but we translate it as I ate it up. Okay. All right. We have eo verbs, eo, ao, and oo verbs. and laleo, agapao, and phaneroo. And so he has those forms as well. Of course, they've got an augment. So let's put an epsilon. The alpha becomes long, becomes an eta. And of course, the phi gets get, okay? So that takes care of your augment. Your eo would drop off. And so we have here, and what we've got there, there's your basic root. And we have ein, ethe, and so we have a theta, eta. And epsilon becomes an eta. Epsilon becomes an eta, and we have a they. It was spoken. That's your third person singular. Let's go back up and see it. And that's your third person singular. It's a theta, they. There it is. That's how they got that right there. All right. Now, it was spoken third person singular. Aleo. Agapao, and the alpha becomes an eta, lengthens. We have this one, I was loved. This is first person singular thing. All right. And so the alpha becomes an eta, and we take our basic root. I was loved. Phaneroo, augment. There's your augment. And then we have the oo, and this was they were made manifest. This is a thesan ending. There's your thesan ending. So right here, the double this right here becomes long because two vowels together would make it long. So that's why it becomes an omega. Now the thing that will flip you on this one is the omega frequently goes with the subjunctive mood. So that can mess you up if you're not careful looking at that. Okay. But your thesan ending, let's go back up to it. Thesan, where is it? Yeah, there it is, thesan. That's that thesan ending that we have. And so that would be third person. All right there, thesan. Be third person plural. Okay, we're almost out of time. All right. Any questions here? But we have. All right. What I'm going to do is we're going to kind of come back to this point right here. I want to cover. We'll start with the mute stems next week. We're almost got down to the vocabulary. In this vocabulary, we have kata. That's from Angelo. Just kata preposition on it. See Angelo, and we have this right here is I was received up. So we'll look at that one right there. That is a passive form. Okay. Now, I want you to look at this down here. This translation. This is a passage in 1 Timothy 3:16. So we'll be looking at it, and I'd like for you to kind of work on that for next week, that part at least for next week. I'll try to cover all of it, but I don't think we can do that. We may have to spend an extra week on some of this. All right, we'll let you go on that. But look here, I have a subscript down here on this pronoun right here, relative pronoun, host. It has the textual variant, and here's what happens. What happened at that time, they would abbreviate words. And so host would be omega sigma. All right. It would be a sigma. Now the sigma, it's capital, so it would be like this. Let me make this capital letters, omega sigma. All right. I think that'll work for us. And that's one form. And then we can have a theta. I think right there. I think these are your two forms. Now this was what it looked like. All right. This is what it looked like in your manuscripts. Now look at those are your two manuscripts. All right. One manuscript had this, and the other one had this. And this right here is host right there. And this is abbreviation for God. Well, there's not much difference, is there? What's the only difference is this little mark between it right through the theta. See the problem? Everyone see what the problem was? Any questions? That's your two readings of your manuscripts. The sigma was made looking like a capital C back then, and the sigma looked like a capital, what we call a capital C. So it would look like this right here. See, that's what it looked like at that time. They changed it to this form right here later, but the early manuscripts had it made like that. Now here's the trick. The manuscripts that changed it from God, Thos, God, to hosts, was a rough breathing here, that which are from Alexandria, northern Egypt, which had the Gnostic problems. And the Gnostics were denying that Jesus is the same person as Christ. So Jesus cannot be deity. That was their doctrine. And I think they changed it on purpose. That's my conclusion. But that's my theory. Okay. All right. So be aware of that. So here's the manuscripts that have God in the reading right here, and one Latin Vulgate manuscript, at least one. Some other manuscripts read ho, and they have that form, and that's D in some of the Latin, and others read hos. And so there's just a few manuscripts that read hos. And this is a manuscript that the King James went with this reading up here, God, and the American Standard went with this reading. I think King James is right. All right. Any questions? All right. All right. So we've gone about 4 minutes over our allotted time. We're okay. So we'll pick up back here. We'll pick up with mute stems on the next week, and we'll pick up there. Any questions? Okay. I think I better save that. I don't remember. Let's see. Let me look. What did I do? Did I mess up something up here? All right. I'm not going to save it. I'll go back and check it. All right. Okay. Stop it recording.